Let's talk about covered calls and protective puts. So a covered call is when you own the underlying. That is, you own the stock or whatever asset is that you're investing in. But you're also trying to get a little bit of extra yield through a derivative strategy. And the way it works with covered call is that you own the underlying, but then at the same time, you also sell some call options. That's why it's called covered, because if you have to make good on these call options, when you sell a call option, you're agreeing to give the share to somebody at a specific price if that price occurs. But here it's covered because you actually own those shares anyway. So why would someone want to do a covered call? And the answer is, again, you get a little extra yield. That's because you receive the premium. Someone pays you the premium because they're buying this call option that you sold to them. And of course, they're hoping that the price of the underlying moves above the strike price for this particular option that you sold, and you're hoping that it doesn't. So let's see how this works with some math. Let's say we have 100 shares, because remember, in equity options, one equity option is equal to 100 shares, sort of a standardized thing. So if I have 100 shares and it's $10 per share that I bought it at, maybe I think long term it's going to go up, but I don't think it's going to go up crazy high. And so perhaps what I can do is sell a call option somewhere with a high strike, because I don't think it'll ever reach that much. And if I do that, I can earn the premium. If I sell the call option, I get to keep the premium no matter what, whether the option expires in the money or out of the money. And if the option expires out of the money, that just boosts my income for this stock. I get the return of the stock, but because the option didn't expire in the money, I also got to keep the premium, and I'm still enjoying this stock return. So putting some numbers to it, let's say I sold a call option with a premium of $3 and a strike price, let's say, of $20. So this option is not going to be worthwhile to the buyer unless the share value here, which is currently $10, goes up above 20. And they're paying $3 for the right to have that option. So if the stock goes up, but it only goes from, say, 10 to 15 before this option expires, then my return is going to be that $5. I, the owner of this underlying, earns a return of $5, but I also get to keep this premium of $3. So my net is not $5, but $8. And so that's why you can use these covered calls to make a little bit of extra yield. It's a little bit of extra money that you can get by selling call options on the shares that you already own. So we can see the advantage of that there, but let's take a look at what happens if the stock price really goes through the roof. And let's say it goes from $10 to $30. For you, the person that owned the stock and sold call options on it, what's going to happen is that on the stock itself, you made $20. That's profit to you. And even though we know that this call option is going to get exercised because the value is above the strike, so the call buyer is going to want that, you still get to keep the premium of $3. So here's your profit so far, but you also sold a call option to somebody, and the profit on a call option is the maximum of either the spot minus the strike or 0, that's the profit to the buyer. And you're the seller, so in this case, their gain is going to be your loss. And if we plug those numbers in here, the S minus the X, we have the $30 minus the strike of 20, and just for cleanliness here, that's going to be $10 or 0. The call buyer is going to exercise because the option has a value of 10. So you lost $10 on this call, although you got the premium to recoup some of that. But the net effect of this position, this covered call position, is that you made a $13 profit. You had a profit on this stock, but it was offset by this loss on the call that you wrote. And your net profit at the end of all that is $10 plus the premium that you get to keep. So a $13 profit on this covered call position. And if you hadn't sold this covered call, you would have made here a $20 profit. And so the result of a covered call, if you sort of plot it, looking at the range of different stock prices, is that without any option at all, it would look like this. If you were a buyer of a stock, the higher the stock price, the more you make, the lower the stock price, the more you make. But with a covered call, what happens is that the gain, regardless of gain or loss, gets boosted a little bit. The income you get from this stock gets boosted a little bit by the amount of the premium. And with our example, we saw that boost was $3. So that's an advantage. But the disadvantage is that you cap your gains. You cap your gains at the strike price. Here, you saw that the strike price was $20. Anything above that, the buyer of this call option that you sold is going to exercise. And so the potential payoff from owning this stock when it's a covered call position is increased, but also capped. So it goes from something like this bottom line being the simple buy and hold of a stock, to something like this. At any given point, if the stock price rises too much, then that call option is going to kick in and you don't get to enjoy any additional upside gains on the stock. So that's covered call. Let's talk about something similar but kind of opposite, called protective put. It's similar because you still own some underlying shares, but rather than earning a little bit extra yield by selling calls, what you're going to do is protect the downside. You're going to protect yourself from the risk that these shares fall too much in value. And the way that you're going to do that is to simply buy a call or buy a put on these shares. So if you own 100 shares of something, one thing you can do to protect against the risk of loss from these shares falling in value is to buy a put, and you can select the strike price. So if you buy a put with a strike price that's really low, then the premiums aren't going to be as expensive, but that downside protection won't kick in until the underlying value goes below that strike price. So taking a look at what that would look like with numbers, let's say that you have 100 shares of a stock, and again, it's $10 per share. That's the current value, and that's what you bought them at. And you buy a put because you're worried about the stock price falling in value, but you still want to hold on to it. You don't want to sell. And let's say that the strike price on this is $6. So with this, because it's a put option, anything below $6, this option kicks in and makes money. It's X minus S for the put, for the buyer of a put, which is you. And so the strike is $6. If the stock stays at $10 a share, this is not a worthwhile put option. So you're buying an out of the money put at this point. But if the value of the share falls, say to $2, which is a pretty significant loss, then this put option will protect you and cover that loss. Any loss below the strike price is reimbursed as part of this option. So that's how a protective put works when you own shares. And of course, to buy this type of insurance, to kick in when you have a loss on a share, you have to pay a premium. So we can say, for example, that the premium is $1. You're giving up $1 now to have downside protection on this share so that you can never lose more than $6. Or you can never lose more than, this would actually be $4. You won't lose any more money if the share drops below $6. And so a protective put can be visualized just like a covered call. It's just that you're not capping your upside. You're still getting to enjoy holding this stock and the benefits that accrue with that. It's that you're capping your downside. And the thing about it is that you're paying a little bit of money up front and the cost of the premium to ensure that you've got this type of protection here. So one thing I'm drawing here, and I want to note, is that this all assumes that you're sizing your position correctly. That if you have 100 shares, for example, you're just buying a one put option, because whether it's a call or a put, when it comes to equity options, one option is worth 100 shares of the underlying. So if you want a payoff diagram that looks like this, you have to make sure that these two match in proportion. But the takeaway here with protective put is that you're going from a situation like this, being long only in the stock, to reducing your gains regardless of the outcome of the stock a little bit by the amount of the premium, paying that insurance up front. But the consequence is that, and here would be the strike price of this put that you bought, anything below the strike price for the put that you bought, whenever the equity value falls below that for the shares that you own, that put will kick in and protect you from any further losses in holding this share. So you still get the gains of share appreciation, but you've capped the maximum loss that you can have from owning this share. And that's kind of a cool feature, the protective put. So there's one final thing to talk about, and that's a caller. And this is an option strategy that combines both a covered call and a protective put. So you still have an ownership in the underlying. You still own shares. And what you're doing is, with a covered call, you're capping the maximum gain that you have, but with a protective put, you're also capping the maximum loss that you'll have to endure. And the way it kind of ends up looking is like this. For the range of outcomes that you might experience for owning this stock, going from long only from having losses on the stock to having gains on the stock, if you recall, a covered call will cap your gains. And so beyond a certain point, the point of the strike price, you won't enjoy any more upside to this stock. But by buying a protective put on the same stock through this collar strategy, you also limit your maximum loss. And so even though it's a share that you bought, because you use these two derivatives in the right combination, you've effectively guaranteed yourself a range of price performance for this stock, at least for the duration of the options. And the one thing that is kind of nice about this is that you're selling a call with a covered call, and you're receiving a premium for doing that. For selling that insurance, someone is paying you a fee. And the thing is, you can take that money from selling that call and use it to offset or entirely pay for the put that you buy as part of the protective put leg of this strategy. And so the nice thing about a collar is that you can solidify a range of outcome for your investment portfolio. Regardless of what the stock price does, you know that your portfolio value will be within this certain range. And you can do it in a way that minimizes cost, or if you buy the right range of strikes, if you balance these premiums correctly, can actually result in zero cost to you. No cost to actually put on this hedge because it's being financed by selling that call. So that's a collar, and you can see visually why they call it such. And, derivatives get a bad rap because of the speculation and the amount of volatility that investors can gain or lose very quickly. But we can see how they can be used when looking at a collar or some of these two strategies that we discussed separately. We can see how they can be used to actually reduce risk, not increase it. And so derivatives can actually, if used effectively, be a very useful tool for reducing risk in a portfolio.